Well, welcome to week 28 of the story. Here we are. Remember last week we looked at the completion of God's upper story work. Now, that being the completion of what he did to win us back to himself. Wow, what a great one. We looked at the resurrection and God's work and stamp of approval on Jesus. But now we come to implementing his plan to reach the world. Remember that one of the things a rabbi asked of his disciples was that they were to carry on his teachings and continue to teach his teachings after he was gone. And Jesus has given the disciples what we call the Great Commission, to go into all the world. Now that's a daunting task. And talk about a new beginning for these disciples. The disciples are speaking in languages that they did not know. People are hearing the good news of Jesus in their own language. Many of these who are hearing it will return to their homelands to tell this new story to the people around them. As you read through the story this week, you read about how this empowering Holy Spirit transformed people and gave them the courage needed to face persecution, imprisonment, all for the sake of Christ. You read about the disciples, Peter and John, Philip. You read about Saul and Stephen and Ananias and Barnabas. All of those are powerful testimonies of God's work in their lives and the transformation that took place. The question is, what was the power? Where did it come from? What was the source of their courage? Well, first, Jesus knew these men. He had spent 3 years with some of them, teaching and encouraging and mentoring them. He knew what they would need when he was gone, and so he gave the disciples resources that they would need for the mission he was sending them on. Well, let's look at what he gave those who he called to carry this out. First, Jesus gave the disciples first. He captured them with his passion. You see, Jesus' passion was always people, not just the Jews, but everyone. He came to the sick, to the brokenhearted, to the weak, to the strong, to the rich, to the poor, to the captive, to the free. Everyone, all people are enslaved by sin, Jesus knew, and he came to set them free. That's people like you and me. Same life situations we have. To the remotest part of the earth, he said, wherever there are people, take my gospel there. Don't be afraid. Don't be shy. Share it there. He captured them with his passion. But second, he encouraged them with his presence. Jesus knew that they would feel alone and abandoned, and without his presence, they would just return and go to their former jobs and lives, and the world would never be changed. It would just be the same. It is his presence that would motivate them to move on, to continue the work. And look how he convinced them with his presence. The reality of his resurrection. They see him. The reality of his ascension, they saw it. And the reality of his return, well, they believed that. He encouraged them with his presence. But also, he focused them with his plan. Jesus knew that without some direction, all this enthusiasm that had been generated would amount to nothing but so much activity, kind of like a hamster running on a hamster wheel. All kinds of energy, but not getting anywhere. Without a plan, people would soon grow weary. They'd begin to fizzle, and soon the gospel fire would go out. He gave the disciples a plan to follow. It's a simple plan. It's not complicated, and here it is. He began with their community, Jerusalem, moved to their country, Judea, reached to the continent, Samaria, and then spread to the world, the othermost part. He focused them with a simple plan. He said, this is how you get it done. And then fourth, he enabled them with his power. Jesus knew his task was impossible for these to do in their own strength. He knew when opposition or persecution came, that on their own, they would cut and run. He also knew that with his power, they could stand firm. So he gave them his Spirit, the Holy Spirit, and they received power. Acts 1 calls it dynamite power. The same power, the Ephesian writer Paul says in Ephesians, it's the same power that the Father used to raise Jesus from the dead. That's the power he placed within each of them and also in each of us. It is the Holy Spirit that gives strength and endurance to us. He enabled them with his power. Well, he empowers us. He does, you and me. Jesus will do for us what he did for the disciples. We have the same needs. We have a source that the disciples didn't have, though. The written word, the Bible. Some say if Jesus would appear to me the way he did the disciples, then I would do what he says. Who are you trying to convince? We have far more than the disciples had, and we sit and we tremble. You see, Jesus now uses his word instead of his physical presence to give us what we need. What do we need? We need his passion. We need his presence. We need his plan. We need his power. And we are equipped with all of those, the same as the disciples. Now what do? He uses his word to show us that. The presence, the Holy Spirit living within us, gives us all of those things, everything we need. How do we grow the kingdom? How do we fulfill the command he gave us, the charge he gave us, the ministry he gave us? Well, the method's the same for us as it was for the disciples. When we experience the things Jesus gives us, his passion, his presence, his plan, and his power, we will develop a worldwide focus. The plan is the same. Our Jerusalem, well, for us it's Huntington. Our Judea, West Virginia. Our Samaria, North America. The remotest part of the earth continues to be the same. The remotest part of the earth. Because we care, we witness. We share with our neighbors and our friends. We support the work of God outside our community by sending missionaries to places where we cannot go to do the work of God there. Consider these facts just real quickly. We as American Baptists have missionaries in 29 countries. We partner with other Baptists in another 76 countries. Each of our missionaries and partners see tens of thousands of people baptized each year. We work in many hospitals and schools. Our missionaries teach farming and healthy living to people. We preach and teach all over the world from right here at New Baptist, here in Huntington. God expects his children to take the message to the world around them, from our Jerusalem to the remotest part of the earth. That's what God expects. He's done all he can do to see that you can get it done. And we can. Because, remember, we have his passion, we have his presence, we have his plan, we have his power. The only question remains is, where in the world are you going to serve him? The answer? Right where you are. Wherever that is. Here in Huntington. Right now. Our church mission says that we want we are a people who love Christ, who grow in his word, and who are a blessing wherever God has placed us. That's what it means. We do missions because it is who we are as followers of Jesus. Remember, it's a simple plan. We are to begin right here and then reach out further and further and further. Open your eyes. Broaden your horizons. In God's power, let's move the kingdom forward. Let's help finish the work. Thank you. Have a good evening. Enjoy the discussion. Enjoy Randy Frazie's video.